I worked briefly as a psych tech a few years ago. The badge beeped, the doors clicked, and I learned how to smile like a sticker someone slapped on my face. Most of us were the same age and pretended the place was a launch pad, not a holding pen. We talked about grad school or hospital jobs while we microwaved lunches and filled out suicide risk screeners with pens that always ran out midway. The clinic sold continuity of care the way gyms sell memberships. 2 visits a month, bundles, auto-renew. When someone genuinely stabilized and asked about discharge, management called it transition planning and sighed over the lost revenue. We nodded along. I kept my head down and wrote clean notes that hit the keywords: calm, oriented, denies SI. It all felt tidy in the chart, not in real life. Jenny was one of the nurses, steady hands, soft voice, quick jokes. She did IVs like origami and remembered everyone's preferred phlebotomy chair, as if that mattered. We got along. She wasn't fake nice, just efficient in a way that looked kind. One December afternoon, the schedule thinned. Everyone grabbed peppermint barf from the break room, and a manager waved us out early with a "don't log overtime, please." Jenny said she needed holiday decorations, and I tagged along. I had one follow-up call left, a refill check-in. The app let us call from anywhere. The clinic numbers still showed on their phones. My manager texted a thumbs up, then document. Of course, always document. Jenny drove. Her car smelled like hand sanitizer and mint gum. Marshall's was a mess of carts and wreaths and kids in puffy coats. The line curled back to seasonal candles. I figured I'd knock out the call while she waited. "Keys?" I asked. She handed them over without thinking and pushed a cart into the snake of people. I sat in the driver's seat, turned on the heater, opened the app, and dialed. The guy answered, a waterfall of words: sleep sucks, brain fog. Should he cut the dose? I parroted back like training taught me. Hearing you. Makes sense. Let's adjust. 2 minutes in, it hit me. No clipboard, no paper. I needed to write. I said, "Hold on one SEC. I need a pen." And my thumb popped open the center console. Little theft, I told myself. Borrow a pen, scribble notes, confess later, she'll tease me done. Inside, lip balm, receipts, 2 pens, and a small green spiral notebook. I grabbed both pens, flipped the notebook to find a blank page. None blank. First page, a name, full name, not our standard initials. An address, a parenthesis, Blue House. Next page, another full name. Street, house with a basketball hoop. Then another, basement windows level with sidewalk. My stomach pitched. The name snagged like fishhooks. I knew them. Intake after intake brands you whether you want it to or not. The teacher who cried in group. The man with the basement unit who hated daylight. The teenager whose mother insisted on late slots because of basketball practice. Goddamn hoop. I froze with the phone pressed to my cheek. The patient still talking, my mouth making stale reassurance noises while my eyes swallowed line after line. Work hours, pets, landmarks. Left porch camera, mailbox dent, lives alone, spare key under frog, alley trash night Thursday, morning light never on, dog small, doesn't bark at strangers. Nothing about meds, nothing about care, all about access. I unmuted and repeated a plan, scheduled him with the front desk, promised a refill and a follow-up. I typed notes in my phone instead of on paper because I refused to touch that notebook again. My fingers shook. I ended the call and set the phone face down like it might scream. The car hummed. Outside, the parking lot scraped and clattered. Inside, it felt like the air thinned out and I had to sip at it. There is no good story you can tell yourself when you see names you recognize next to directions to their lives. I tried. Maybe Jenny kept addresses for mailed resources. Except we didn't mail anything except bills, and she didn't do billing. Maybe she jotted them for home health. We didn't do home visits. Maybe these were relatives. Sure, with the same crises and houses I charted. The handwriting killed me. Precise. No decoration, as if she meant to be clear for herself later. I put the notebook back exactly, as if misaligning it would set off a bomb. I shut the console and sat with my hands planted on my thighs like I was freezing them in place. I practiced what I'd say. I needed a pen. I opened the console. I saw something that scared me. That was the honest version. The other version curled up in my head. Say nothing, go home, pretend you never touched it. Every whistleblower fantasy puked itself out. Compliance forms, HR rooms with plant walls, the word HIPAA thrown like a dart. My name tied to a violation for opening the console at all. My brain argued with my gut. The gut kept screaming with no words. I watched the store doors open and close, the automatic whoosh, families streaming out with red bags. My hands itched to text our manager and also to throw my phone in the back seat and pretend I'd lost it. Jenny returned grinning, arms looped with garlands, oblivious. "Score," she said, loading the back seat. She asked if my call was done. "Yeah." I answered, voice flat as cardboard. She started the engine, pulled into traffic, hummed along to a crappy pop song. I studied her profile, and it made me sick that I was analyzing a woman I liked like a threat assessment. She wasn't different, still the same person who tucked tissues in his sleeves for crying patients, who brought me coffee when I looked wrecked. The notebook didn't make sense in that body. That was the worst part. Monsters usually telegraph. This didn't. The dissonance stretched my head like a rubber band. She dropped me in my building. I climbed the stairs and locked the door twice, and then a third time. I sat on the floor with my back against the door until my legs went numb. I tried to breathe and heard my own breath like it came from someone hiding with me. I replayed every page. I forced myself to imagine the worst scenario so I wouldn't sugarcoat it. Someone in a car on a dark street. Engine off, watching a porch light that never turned on. Someone knowing Thursdays the cans went to the curb and the alley would be empty. Someone testing a spare key under a fake frog. My brain jammed on the word spare. I dry heaved into the sink and didn't throw up. I opened a blank email to compliance, typed 2 sentences. I saw a list in a colleague's possession with patient names and addresses, deleted them, stared at the blinking cursor like it blinked back. I drafted a text to Jenny. "Hey, in your console there's a notebook." I deleted that too, because how do you say it without starting a fire you can't control? Next day at work, I did vitals and charted and kept my face steady. Jenny handed me a pen and said, "You're always losing these," and I swallowed the instinct to throw it away like it had a wire. I watched her laugh with a man withdrawing and hold pressure after blood work. I watched her staple reminders for people who forgot everything. Nothing looked off. If anything, she was extra normal. That almost broke me more. I didn't check her console. I didn't speak. I didn't report. Don't call me brave. I wasn't. I was a coward counting the costs, stacking them higher than the risk, telling myself I must have misread. I told myself that until it felt true enough to sleep. I left the clinic not long after. New job, new badge, different brand of lavender soap in the bathrooms. I updated my resume and pretended the old bullet points meant the same thing. But at night, when the apartment went quiet and the fridge kicked off, I'd see the list again. I'd taste the metal in my mouth. I'd judge myself for opening that console and judge myself worse for closing it. If this is a confession, it's late and useless. I'm not naming the clinic or the city because I'm not ready to burn my life down and because maybe I made the whole thing up to justify how much I hated that place. Except I didn't make it up. The handwriting had these tight little Y's. The page edges had a coffee ring on the bottom. The line about the basketball hoop was real in a way that hums under my skin when I pass any driveway. I don't know what Jenny was doing with those addresses. I don't know if anything happened because of them. I only know I saw them. I put the notebook back, and I did not say a goddamn word. I never told anyone about this. I really can't think of any reason for a nurse to keep that kind of notebook with her. Last week on Tuesday, I heard the most air story my mom has ever told me. It was after I got out of school, and I came out of my room when my mom told me about the creepiest thing that ever happened to her at a gas station. When she was coming back home earlier that day, she stopped by a gas station to get gas when she saw the man. He was about her height and was overweight with a tan shirt, jeans, boots. She kept rubbing her hands like she couldn't get rid of a smell. I could still smell gas on her hoodie. She said pump 3 was taped off, so she pulled a 4. Sun hit the glass and threw her face back at her. She swiped the card, lifted the nozzle, and then noticed the first smear on the concrete. Dark, sticky, not oil dark, heavier. Boot treads had pressed through it. That's when her stomach dropped and her brain started lying to her. Ketchup, transmission fluid, something else. But then she saw him by the door. Same tan shirt, but it wasn't tan anymore. It clung to him in patches, soaked from the collar down the belly. His hair hung to his shoulders and stuck in stringy ropes. Glasses slid on his nose. He looked like some nerdy IT guy who wandered out from a cubicle farm, except he had the wrong color on him. Not Halloween splatter. Saturated. Wrapped in it. She said the air carried that metallic taste that makes your gums ache, and she could feel the ghost of it on her tongue while she talked to me. Everyone saw him and pretended to be statues. A woman with a stroller looked at her reflection in the window instead of at him. 2 dudes in camo and boots stood by a lifted truck, arms crossed like they wanted to puff up and couldn't find the start button. A delivery guy paused mid-step, box tucked under his elbow, eyes locked on the automatic doors. Inside, the cashier braced on the counter. His hands visibly shook. Nobody spoke. Nobody ran. People just held still because moving would mean choosing a side. The man never scanned the crowd. He just walked in, calm like he had a shopping list. He slid open the cooler door. The suction made a tiny squeak. He grabbed a Mountain Dew. He turned and plucked a Snickers off the rack. He left little wet half-moons on the glass with his fingers. She said she heard the drip on tile. Zot, zot. The cashier's scanner beep felt obscene in the quiet. He fished a card from his back pocket and set it down like he had 1,000 times. Blinking green light. Approved. Receipt. He didn't wipe his hands. He didn't apologize. He didn't act like a person who knows his shirt could start a police report. Mom kept her eyes on the pump screen and watched everything in the reflection. Numbers rolled on the LED. She clenched the handle until her fingers hurt. She wanted to scream, to call 911, to grab a photo, to do something heroic, but fear made her practical and small. Get gas. Get gone. Get home. She hates that about herself. She admitted that. She said it like a confession. He came back out. The sun made the stains more real. He passed close enough that she heard his boots peel off the concrete. There was a thumb smudge right across the left lens of his glasses, like someone pressed his face down. She held still and tried to be furniture. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. He opened the passenger door of a beat-up gray sedan, sat, cracked the Mountain Dew, chugged, then tore open the Snickers and bit it clean. Chewed. Swallowed. Chewed again. Stared through the windshield like he was just killing a minute between errands. The pump click finished and made her jump. The nozzle jerked, splashed her shoe, and she hissed a curse, more at herself than anything. She shoved the nozzle back, slapped the cap, got in the car, locked it. She checked her mirror. He sat there, still chewing. She backed out, too fast, tires squealing that short and bare squeal. The gray car rolled forward later, not following, not chasing, just merging out like it had places to be that weren't hers. At this point, I blurted out the obvious. Why didn't you call the cops? She glared like I'd asked why she didn't grow wings. She said, because I didn't know if I was reporting a crime or picking a fight. You call, and then you wait, and then the thing you called about knows you're sticking around. Also, what if it was a prank with fake blood? What if she looked dramatic and dumb on some TikTok angle? What if it wasn't fake and the guy noticed her taking a picture? She said the air felt thick with bad options. She drove home crooked into the driveway, left the car at a diagonal, grabbed her bag and keys, and went inside fast, the way you do when you feel watched. She locked the door, then checked it again. She washed her hands forever. She stuffed the hoodie into a trash bag and double knotted it like it could leak. The house felt different after. quieter. Every sound from the street suddenly meant something. A truck downshifting became the gray sedan creeping. A kid on a scooter became footsteps. She scrolled local news, then county news, then the scanner app. I did my own searches later. Man covered in blood gas station. Stabbing near me. Police activity today. Nothing. Not a single mention. If you spill that much life in public, it should ripple. It didn't. That made it worse. The next afternoon, I drove past the station to see it with my own eyes. I told myself it would break the spell. The lot looked normal. The yellow tape was gone. The inside smelled like coffee and warm sugar. A different cashier rang people up and barely looked awake. I stared at the floor where Mom said the drops had fallen, expecting a stain that wouldn't scrub out. Shiny tile. No trace. Maybe they mopped hard. Maybe I'm stupid. I bought gum and left and felt like I just visited a stage after the actors struck the set. Mom got mad that I went. Then she admitted something she hadn't told me. When he passed her, there was a sound under his shirt. Not keys. Not phone. A wet sliding noise, faint like plastic moving across skin. Her brain supplied an image she didn't want, and she shut it out so hard her temples throbbed. She thought she heard a fly buzz once. Maybe phantom sound. Maybe not. She didn't look down at his hands. She didn't want to see nails or rings or anything that would turn the whole thing into a case file lodged behind her eyes forever. We argued about responsibility. I said if everyone freezes, bad men walk free. She said brave people die in parking lots because they think movies are real. She said, I am your mother, not a cop. And I shut up because I got the message. She also said the military-looking guys didn't move either, and that knocked some righteousness out of me. Fear can make statues out of anyone, even trained ones. That night, I called the non-emergency line myself because the silence felt like complicity. I gave the story secondhand and messy. The woman on the line asked for a plate number, direction of travel, identifying marks. I had gray sedan and tan shirt and the world's worst summary. She said she'd noted. You could hear paperwork sliding into a stack. I hung up and felt like I'd thrown a cup of water at a house fire. The days after bent around small rituals. We locked doors, then checked them. We left the porch light on like we were signaling aircraft. I walked past the trash can and smelled a hint of iron, even though I know it was in my head. The bag hoodie waited for pickup, and I watched the truck clamp down and crush it flat. And the hiss it made my stomach tighten because it sounded like a bottle opening. Mom almost laughed at me, then didn't. I started catching tin shirts at the edge of my vision everywhere. Delivery guys, warehouse workers, dads at pumps, and every time my chest tightened before my brain caught up. I rehearsed imaginary bravery and then remembered how Mom said the air went thick, and I knew I'd probably do the same thing she did. Keep small, finish the task, leave. I kept trying to logic it away. Slaughterhouse shift. Anti-accident. Fake blood prank. But logic kept stubbing its toe on little facts. Why the Mountain Dew? Why Snickers? Why no hurry? Why that complete blankness in his face, like grief or panic had never even visited? If you're hurt, you ask for help. If you're guilty, you look around. He did neither. He just consumed sugar and fizzed like a machine topping up. Maybe that's the part that still clings. He acted like a customer first, a person second. The register beeped, the door whooshed, the pump clicked. All the daily noises carried on while something awful threaded through them and didn't snag. The system worked, receipts printed, commerce continued, and everyone pretended their job was to stand still and watch. I can't give you a clean ending. There's no news story, no arrest, no hospital request for witnesses, no grainy security cam going viral. There's just my mom's voice flattening out when she remembers the smell, my arguments that go nowhere, and the way my hand checks the deadbolt now without thinking. We didn't save anyone. We didn't even confirm anything happened. The world shrugged and kept rotating. So I keep doing what I can do. Skin headlines, glance at gray sedans, plan exits from parking lots like a paranoid little freak. I wish I'd written down the time when she told me, like that would pin it. I wish she'd taken a picture. She wishes she hadn't stopped for gas. We both wish the universe gave answers instead of echoes. I've researched online and tried to check the news, but I have not heard about anything where I am for gas stations like this recently. Looking back in the situation, almost a week later I question if it was a prank or something else, but there is always the possibility of it not being so. There may be errors in the text, as I wrote it using translator. I apologize in advance for this. It happened when I was 13 or 14. I don't remember exactly. I was visiting my uncle. His house was located on the shore of a small lake, with trees growing along its shore. One half of the lake was planted with willow trees along the road that skirted the lake and passed next to the house. On the opposite shore from the road was a steep hill with a height of 15 meters, on top of which poplars grew about another 30 to 40 meters high. I stayed in the house for the night and went to bed. Above the bed I was lying on was a window that was slightly open to let fresh air into the room. From my position, I could see the tops of the poplar trees and the beautiful night sky, but I didn't pay much attention to the window and quickly fell asleep. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a soft hum that sounded like a transformer buzzing. Over the course of a minute, the hum gradually increased, and I realized that the sound was coming from outside. As the hum grew louder, I began to look out the window. At some point, I saw a light coming from above the treetops, which I initially mistook for streetlights. However, I quickly realized that the light was moving and that there were actually 3 sources. These sources resembled searchlights that were rotating relative to each other and moving towards the house. I cannot provide an exact measurement, but I estimate that they were approximately 20 meters above the treetops and moving at a speed of around 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. As they passed over the house, the noise was comparable to that of an airplane flying high in the sky. The whole event took place in 20 to 30 seconds, and during it I didn't move, maybe out of fear or maybe out of fascination, because the sight of the bright night sky with swaying trees and a UFO flying above it is truly mesmerizing. After the event, I woke up my sisters. My cousin and sister were also sleeping in a room with me, and told them about what happened, but they didn't believe me. They tried to convince me that I was dreaming, but even to this day, I am certain that I was not asleep and that it was a real experience. The room pressed in like a fist. The mattress springs dug my side and the sheet clung to my back. I smelled lake water and boot polish, damp wood and dust. That small window latch clicked when the breeze nudged it, a tiny tooth tapping. I counted the clicks and tried to drift, but the air felt held, like the house waited for me to notice something wrong and name it. The hum slid in under the window. Not loud at first, just a tired wire, a distant box on a pole, but it carried weight. It set a line behind my eyes and tightened it. I propped my elbow and the bed groaned. I froze like an idiot, as if the noise could hear me. The hum rose and smoothed out, not like a car, not like a plane I knew. It stayed level and pushed the walls a little. I stuck 2 fingers under the curtain and lifted. Cold air hit my teeth and tasted like a penny. That taste crawled along my gums and sat there. I hated it right away because it made the night feel used. The poplar crowns across the lake usually looked like a dark fence. Now they twitched, as if the sky brushed them with a hand. The hum climbed. My heartbeat tried to climb with it and failed. Then the first light smeared along the upper leaves, pale and heavy, a color too clean to belong here. 2 more slid in beside it, not blinking, not honest, just moving like they owned the air. They rotated around each other without touching, like they were tied to the same invisible nail, and swung in some slow math I couldn't learn on the spot. I kept waiting for a shape to show between them, wings, balloon, anything, but behind the light there was only more night. That was the worst part. Nothing cast those beams, and they still existed. I didn't call it a UFO in my head. I didn't call it anything. Names make things small. This didn't want small. It wanted me to lie down and be a mark on a map. The window glass vibrated against the frame, a thin whisper. My ear pressure ticked and popped. The willows on our side chattered though no wind reached my face. I felt that rattle in my fingernails. I clenched my hands to stop it, and the bed springs squealed a little. I almost apologized out loud to the dark. They came over the hill. If they were 20 meters above the poplars like I guessed, they weren't high. I could gauge it by the hill's shoulder and the stretch of trunks we measured once for a dumb school project. My brain did measurements while the rest of me refused to move. The three lights glided over the water and the hum thickened. Not angry, not kind, just total. It pressed down and flattened everything else like snow inside your head. When the roofline swallowed them for 2 seconds, my stomach flipped. Losing sight felt worse than seeing. I counted 1, 2, and then they cleared the peak and washed the yard in that dead daylight. The gravel of the road turned gray-white, every chip too sharp. The lake looked like glass set under a dentist lamp. In that color, nothing looked alive. The house seemed pinned to the earth by a hand I couldn't see. Nails held, boards held, and I held because I thought if I didn't, I'd slide right out the window and into that white. I wanted to scream my sister's name. I didn't. The hum sat on my voice. My breath shortened to shallow sips. I decided that if I stayed still, it wouldn't notice me. And yes, I know how stupid that sounds now. I felt young then in a way I never shook off. They crossed above and moved toward town, the three of them keeping their weird dance, always the same distance, always drifting around that fake center. No red blink, no aircraft honesty. If a plane flew that low, we would hear metal and air tear. This just hummed like a clean machine meant for a place without wind. 20 seconds, maybe 30. It's hard to measure time when your body behaves like prey. Then the hum faded. Not like a switch, more like someone pulled a cloth over it. The crickets came back one by one. The glass stopped whispering. The latch still. The taste stayed. I shook my cousin awake and earned a slap. I grabbed my sister's shoulder and she hissed my name. I pointed at nothing and choked on words. Outside, above, that's what came out. They stared past me with that mean sleepy look people wear when they refuse to see something because seeing it would drag them out of the safe part of night. I told them I smelled metal. I pushed the curtain and showed the quiet trees like proof. Stupid move. Quiet trees prove nothing. They sighed and said I dreamed it. The word dream hit me like spit. I wanted to fight them in whispers. I shoved my heel into the mattress and bit my tongue before I cursed them awake enough to scream. I lay there with my heart sprinting on the spot. I tracked every house sound. Pipes breathed. A beetle ticked. The fridge thumped, and the thump almost sent me through the ceiling. I stared at the seam of the window until my eyes watered and the poplars blurred, and those 3 pale circles replayed on my lids each time I blinked. I know how memory can lie. This didn't. Memory usually turns loud things louder, big things bigger. Here the loud part had been the quiet of it, the clean hum, and that stayed exactly the same each time I ran it. At first light, I went out barefoot. The board's bit cold. The yard looked normal, which felt like an insult. I searched for anything, a scorched patch, a toppled branch, a dead fish, some weird soot, but the world kept its mouth shut. The water mirrored the hill like a postcard. The willows shook like always. The road wore yesterday's tire lines and nothing else. If the poplars noticed, it didn't tip me off. That made me angrier than fear did. Something came and pressed on us and left no mark. That's theft. It stole witness. At breakfast, I tried again. My uncle snorted into his coffee and started throwing words at it like bandages. Military, swamp gas, plane, drone, weather. Every adult has a drawer of labels they slap on things to keep them small. He told me to eat. I ate and chewed too hard and tasted that coin taste again like it lived in me now. I hated that I almost let his labels settle. I held the picture in my head like it would dissolve if I blinked. The next night, I lay the same way and set the curtain the same and matched my breathing to the stupid latch, clicked to trick time into repeating itself. Nothing came. It's sick to admit I wanted it back. I wanted a second pass to free me from dream. I also wanted never again. That's how it hooks you. Hope and dread tie the same knot. Days later, I still jerked at any hum, even the lights in the grocery store. I checked the sky every time the wind touched the trees. I judged planes by their blink like a cop checking papers. I pretended I didn't. I did. The pretending didn't help. People think the horror sits in the event. For me, it parked in the days after, when everyone politely bent reality around my words. I learned how easy it is to exile someone just by calling their eyes a pillow. It didn't make me special. It made me quiet. I stopped bringing it up. I carried it like a hot coin. Some nights, when the air gets heavy and our town hums in the way it does before a storm, I catch that taste again and my scalp tightens, and I stand by my window longer than I admit, waiting for 3 pale mouths of light to slide open above the trees and tell me I didn't invent them. I know what I saw. I know the way the glass whispered and the nails sang and the willows shook without wind. I know the shape of the fear that pinned me, and I know the anger after, the kind that chews on you because there's nobody to hand it to. If I could trade the memory for a clean night, I wouldn't. I wish I didn't feel that, but I do. And I keep hearing their sleepy voices saying I dreamed it, and I keep wanting to drag them to the window and press their faces to the glass and make them taste metal. I told them about what happened, but they didn't believe me. They tried to convince me that I was dreaming, but even to this day, I am certain that I was not asleep and that it was a real experience. I just have to share this story because I keep trying to come up with my own answers as to what was happening in this situation, and it has been consuming me. Yesterday, I went to the park like I always do, volume low, keys between my fingers out of habit. 2 loops there, the inner one where the strollers pack up, and the outer track that skirts the soccer fields and squeezes past a hill and a strip of woods. That squeeze point always feels like a throat. When you walk it alone, you feel how fast a person can disappear. I keep my head up there. I count breaths, not songs. I scan faces without being weird about it. I notice a guy up ahead, maybe 500 feet. Black hoodie, black jeans, black shoes. Full funeral outfit on a sunny 65. It pinged my brain, but I let it slide. People run cold, people dress stupid, whatever. I kept my pace and coasted down the hill into that tight curve where the field sits higher to the left and the woods press to the right. I looked up to check where he was, and gone. No way he cleared the corner or the parking lot that fast. I know the math of that stretch. Your body learns the distance the same way it learns the steps to your kitchen in the dark. He couldn't have vanished unless he stepped off. I checked left. Empty field. White lines fading, nets yawning. I checked right. A trunk, then a shoulder, then the hood. He was 10 feet in, standing in that shallow brush where you can watch without committing. He didn't fidget. He didn't pretend to tie his shoe. He didn't belong there, and he acted like he knew it and enjoyed the knowledge. The angle of his head read as deliberate, chin tucked enough that the hoodie shadowed his face. Hands low. I felt something cold click behind my ribs like a deadbolt. My legs turned before my mouth caught up. I pivoted and ran. No yak, no pride. Knees up, arms dumb, heart plowing. My brain didn't narrate. It shouted one word, away. I hit my boyfriend's contact and barked, come to the park. Now. He started to ask why. I hung up and pumped my legs harder. I met one person the whole way back, an older man with a sun visor and those calf sleeves that cut circulation and make people feel fast. I spat the mess at him, guy in the woods, black hoodie, hiding right around the bend. He snorted like I'd mistaken a deer for a ghost. That little laugh burned more than the sprint. I spun to point to prove I wasn't inventing monsters, and in that second I saw the hoodie again, back on the path about 400 feet away, moving. Not rushing, gaining. The older man adjusted his watch and did a stretch like we were talking about weather. I left him to his pace and swallowed the urge to scream at him. If he wanted the world simple, he could keep it. I chose being rude over being grabbed. I hit the asphalt of the lot and my legs wobbled. I dove into my car, locked the doors, threw my head down, then popped up to check every mirror at once. A sedan backed out across the lot, rolled slow, looped the lanes, and settled 4 spaces from me, angled windows straight at my windshield. The driver sat still. I couldn't see his eyes, but I felt them, that weight like a thumb on the back of your neck. I scanned the park again. There he was, the hoodie man, posted at the pavilion in the center of the baseball diamonds, the exact spot you'd pick if you wanted to see all paths without being seen from any one of them for long. He stood and watched. Then he paced, phone to his ear, not talking, not listening, just giving himself a prop and an alibi. My boyfriend swung into the lot and braked hard. He came to my window fast, jaw tight in that way men do when they want to turn fear into usefulness. I poured the whole story out. He kept glancing around like he could fix the park by squinting at it. "You're okay," he said. "I'm right here. Nothing's going to happen with me standing at your window." I wanted that sentence to be true. I also wanted to slap it out of the air. "Nothing? You can't guarantee jack." That tone, calm, reasonable, shaved the edges off my fear and turned it into embarrassment, which pissed me off. I told him we needed to leave now. He half shrugged toward the track like he wanted to go show me there was nothing in those trees except squirrels. "Do you think I made this up?" I asked. He didn't, not really, but he hated that he couldn't do something simple like fix a flat tire and call it a day. The hoodie man cut off his pacing and started down the sidewalk toward us. Phone still up, head dipped so the screen faced me like a camera lens. He passed close enough that I caught the smell of laundry, soap over sweat, which made me think he dressed for this. He didn't look confused, didn't look lost, didn't look anywhere except at our plates, our faces, my hands on the wheel. When he turned the corner and put the pavilion between us, his arm dropped and the call ended instantly. No would-be, no lingering. I watched the way he moved. Efficient. Practiced. He disappeared behind the concession stand like he knew every blind spot. I told my boyfriend again that we needed to go. He finally nodded, slid back in his truck, tucked in behind me like a shepherd dog, and we rolled out. Only then did the sedan leave its spot. It didn't follow us, but it waited a beat, like it wanted to make sure we saw it move. I drove with my spine tight and my eyes cutting to the rear view every 10 seconds. At a red light, I realized my hands still shook on the wheel. We reached my place. My boyfriend walked my rooms like danger might hide behind the toaster. He said I did the right thing. He meant it. But I could tell a piece of him still lived in a land where nothing truly bad happens at 10:45 a.m. in a busy park. I called the police because my chest needed a record out there with my name on it. The dispatcher asked for time, place, clothing, height, everything you can't get right when adrenaline rots your memory. I said all black and winced at how useless that sounds. She said an officer would swing by. I thanked her and hung up. That was the best I could do without a video and a bruise. All afternoon, my brain ran loops. Not dramatic what-ifs, boring ones that end in body bags. What if I hadn't looked right at the exact second he wanted me to? What if I kept walking past that tree and he'd stepped out toe-to-toe and I'd tripped because the path dips? What if there was a second guy in the trees I didn't see because I was busy being polite to a stranger's laugh? The back stretch of that track drops into a pocket where sound gets eaten by leaves. 6 feet off the path and you're gone to anyone but God. You don't need a white van if you make the world ignore the first 2 seconds. And then the other side of it clawed at me. The way the older man laughed, the way my boyfriend planted himself and announced safety like a spell. I get why they did it. Fear makes people dumb, and denial makes them feel brave. But that laugh almost hooked me. It almost made me go back to prove something. That's the trick, right? Make the target explain herself until she's within arm's reach. I'm mad at how fast shame slid into my throat. I'm mad that I looked for permission to run. I'm mad that I'm even typing this like I owe anyone a neat narrative to justify the sprint. Someone will say, maybe he was making a call, or maybe he dropped something in the woods. Maybe he's a harmless idiot who plays dress up and angles his phone at women for fun. But my body knows what my mouth can't prove. He stepped off the path and hid. He watched. He reappeared without hurry. He staged a phone to look busy while closing distance. He lowered it the second he thought we couldn't see. He circled the pavilion like it was a post. He made me do the math while he saved his breath. That pattern isn't random. It's a rehearsal. Today I keep thinking about the stupid small choices I'll make different. I'll carry spray in my fist, not somewhere in my bag. I'll loop the front side when it's empty. I'll trust the drop in my gut, even when someone nearby rolls their eyes. And if a man in a visor ever laughs again, I'll let him watch my back get smaller while I call from my car, and I won't waste a second on his comfort. Fuck the instinct that says don't make a scene. There was no reason for him to be standing in the woods right there at all. I keep thinking about the what ifs, what could have happened if I wasn't paying close enough attention and kept walking. I have no idea what the intention was, but it definitely did not feel right at all. This entire situation was a wake-up call for me to never feel weird for paying close attention to my surroundings, as you really never know what people are capable of. I would have never considered myself a target for anything this situation could have led to, but unfortunately, it can happen to anyone. I was in high school and had to walk to and from school every day because I lived too far out to catch the bus. There was an alley I usually took as a shortcut, so I wouldn't have to whack all the way around the block. It saved time, and I had never felt unsafe. But I had stopped using it for a while. My mom had recently been stopped by a man while she was alone. He asked for directions and then asked her to get into his car to help him find the street he needed. She didn't and came home safe, but the whole thing rattled me. So I avoided the alley until one day. I was tired and just didn't feel like taking the long way home. It was a short alley, just a pass through between a couple of houses. Nothing had ever happened before. I thought it'd be fine. I had barely entered the alley when I heard a car behind me on the street. Something in me just knew to look back. There was a van, an older guy inside, slowing his vehicle down, and he was staring straight at me. I kept walking, tried to act normal, but something was off. My gut was screaming at me to turn around, go back the long way, and get somewhere public where people could see me. But I didn't. I didn't want to look paranoid or dramatic. Maybe he'd just drive by. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Still, the way his eyes followed me made my skin crawl. Something in me screaming that something was about to go down. Then I had this thought, get your phone out. Pretend you're on a call. So I did. I held it up to my ear and started fake talking. Still, my phone didn't have minutes. I couldn't actually call anyone. That made me panic even more. If something happened, I was still walking, pretending to talk, when I heard a car coming down the alley. It was that van. He had turned into the alley. I felt my stomach drop. All I could think about was my mom's story, how that guy tried to lure her into his car. The weird vibe, the wrongness of it all. Now I was living it, and I was alone, a child. The van crept up next to me and slowed down. He stopped right beside me, looked me up and down. Then he asked if I could help him find a street. I said I didn't know street names, and he just stared at me, silent, like he was thinking, measuring, calculating, like he was weighing the pros and cons. He was looking at me, looking at my phone. I was frozen. Every part of me was screaming, don't run, don't blink, don't even breathe. I was frozen solid, my mind completely blank. Maybe the cons outweighed the pros because finally he just drove away. As soon as he turned out of the alley, I ran all the way home without stopping. I looked over my shoulder the whole way. I told my mother what happened. She accused me of making up my story for attention. The next day, she had her boyfriend walk me to school. When nothing happened, she doubled down and called me an attention-seeking liar. She said I was just trying to copy her. She had no idea how scared I was as a teenage little girl. She never believed me. That's the part one tell people, the clean spine of it. The mess lived underneath. That night, I lay in bed and mapped my room against the world like I was planning an escape from a burning house. I counted the squeaks in the hallway boards in case I needed to move without sound. I cracked the curtain and watched headlights smear across the ceiling and imagined each one belonged to that van. I smelled oil that wasn't there. I pictured the inside of it. Carpet glued over metal, ratty straps, a cooler with a busted latch, a blanket that never gets washed. My mind did the rest, and none of it made sense for a made-up story. Morning shoved me back onto the sidewalk. Her boyfriend clomped alongside me like a mall cop, chewing gum, tapping his phone. He told me not to be dramatic. I kept my mouth shut and scanned every car mirror for eyes. I clocked the nearest porches, the doors that stayed unlocked, the dogs that barked at anything. I folded my fingers around my keys until my knuckles whitened. He peeled off half a block early because you can see the school from here, like sight equals safety. I walked the last stretch with my shoulders squared and my throat tight, and I hated him for leaving, and I hated myself for needing anyone at all. At school, I tried to spit it out once more. A girl said pepper spray and laughed when I said I couldn't afford it. She said, use hairspray. I picture myself spraying some creep while he laughed and picked me up anyway. I stopped talking after that. People like horror when it comes in episodes with sponsors, not when it sits next to them at lunch and says, he looked at me like inventory. I still took the long way most days, but rain or a late bell or my own tired legs pushed me toward the alley again. Every time I stepped into that narrow throat between fences, my body locked up like it remembered better than I did. I lifted my phone and ran a routine. Hey, I'm almost home. Yeah, I see you. Yep, Dad's at the door. I didn't have minutes. The line was dead. I said the words anyway because fear isn't logical. It's ritual. I kept my left ear open for engines and my right for footsteps. Once, a blue pickup eased by at the far end and paused like a hell breath. I stopped mid-fake sentence and stared back with what I hoped looked like a kid who wouldn't go quiet. It rolled on. I still felt the look tug at me like a hook through fabric. Home wasn't safe either. My mom didn't want to hear it. Not the small stuff, not the maybe nothing stuff that keeps you alive. She said I was making neighbors uncomfortable by acting scared. I said fear isn't a costume I put on. It's a bruise someone left on me. She told me to watch my tone. I wanted to ask what she would have done if I climbed in like the man asked her to do. Would the story be neater if I came home folded in a headline? But I didn't say it. I took my plate to the sink and scrubbed until the water steamed. That week I saw the van again. 2 streets down. Same sun-bleached paint. Same missing hubcap. Not close this time, just drifting past, like it had learned my orbit and wanted to confirm the math. 2 younger kids from our block trailed me, kicking gravel, asking about high school. The van slowed, then kept rolling when it saw I wasn't alone. I told those kids to head home, tell their mom she needed them. They ran without arguing. I watched the corner where the van disappeared and felt something sour climb my throat. He wasn't gone. He was patient. Hunters don't rush. They wait for clean shots. I didn't become brave. I became watchful. I memorized the ambulance routes. I counted seconds between streetlights and thought about shadows like they were water levels rising up my chest. I rehearsed dropping my backpack and bolting in a zigzag. I checked every reflection in storefront glass for a shape too close. I treated my body like a job I couldn't quit. People said I seemed angry. I was. Anger felt like heat, and heat kept me moving. The boyfriend kept doing bits about it. Don't get kidnapped, with a laugh, and I wanted to tell him to shove it. But jokes are how people keep their hands clean. If it's funny, it isn't happening. He'd point at the news and say, see, that's a bad neighborhood, as if danger stayed in red-marked blocks and respected property lines. I watched the local feeds anyway and saw faces, missing women, missing kids. The captions used soft words like vanished, like they were magic tricks, not logistics. I learned the hard way that daylight is just better lighting for bad men. I know someone will read this and say, nothing happened though. Like survival disqualifies the threat. Like my running negates his turning. Like the coin didn't land because I smacked it out of the air. Nothing happened because I made something happen. The phone in my ear, the stare that said I'd make noise, the body that angled toward the street. I showed him risk, and he did the math. That's all it ever is with men like that. Not morals. Math. Years later, after I'd moved, I still track vans. I still feel the notch in my breath when an engine drops to a crawl. I still hold my phone higher than I need to. I wish I could hand that day back and walk the long way, but I can't. I carry it like a spare key I never asked for. Cold, thin, always there when my hand dips into my pocket. Later on, after I'd moved away, I kept hearing stories. Women and kids taken off the streets in broad daylight. Just gone. And I don't doubt that if I hadn't pulled out my phone and made it look like I had a witness, I would have been one of them. To this day, I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't pretended to make that call. And no matter how long it's been, thinking about it still makes me feel cold. I think it always will. When I was 15 years old, I met my now ex-boyfriend. He was a year older than me, but I was best friends with a girl he had known forever. I'll call him Theo. He moved through the halls like smoke, sleeves chewed at the cuffs, eyes half shut like sleep never found him. He drank, he smoked, he skipped, and in our school that counted as a kind of power. I didn't do any of it. I told myself I was just watching, not judging, like I could stand near a mess and somehow not track a home on my shoes. We shared the same friend group, so I learned his people by osmosis. Mitch with the red hoodie and the wired grin, Tommy who carried a mean spark in his teeth, Rich who hovered behind a laugh like he didn't want to commit to being seen. I clocked Tommy and Rich early and decided no thanks. I didn't nag, I just stayed away. Theo never pushed, and that felt like proof he wasn't dangerous to me. Stupid kid logic that I kept polishing until it shined. Our town sold itself as safe. Port City, yeah, so the big stories were drug busts and fisherman gossip. My old city called the 5 o'clock, news the murder show. Here, the worst you heard was a bar fight, a dumb knife pulled and never used. I started to think violence was a radio station you could tune out if you kept the dial steady. That Friday after school, we landed at a mutual friend's third-floor place. The place smelled like pizza boxes and spilled beer. Theo looked wrecked and called it a long night. Mitch hadn't come to school at all and showed up wearing gray instead of his usual red. That hit my eye like a missing stop sign. I filed it and kept quiet. People cracked beers. Someone cued music on a phone. I sat on the floor and picked a loose thread in the rug until it knotted around my finger. Then Theo's phone lit. His mom. He rolled his eyes, answered, and I watched his face change like weather. Annoyed, then confused, then terrified. She demanded to know why cops were at their house asking for him and Mitch. He looked at Mitch. Mitch looked at him. Their expressions went flat and old, like they practiced this kind of dread. Before he could shape a lie, his mom started bawling into the phone, crying, "Oh my God, Rich is dead." Why is he dead? The words hit the room like a brick. We all froze. I could have asked 100 questions. I swallowed all of them. She said she was coming to get them and hung up, and the silence stretched long and thin until it sang. Someone said we should go downstairs. We filed out like a field trip, single file, no one breathing, my stomach swinging like a light bulb. I went last because I always go last. I like to see exits. The front door blew open before I touched the final step. Cops flooded in. Helmets, vests, guns already up, voices punching the air. Hands up, on your stomach. Do not move. My body hit the carpet before my brain caught up. A knee pressed the back of my neck. Plastic cuffs bit my wrists. A rifle filled my peripheral vision, and I thought, so that's how big it looks up close? And I hated myself for thinking anything at all. Boots stamped past my ears. Drawers slammed. Someone yelled clear. Someone else yelled my name, and then stopped because names didn't matter in that kind of noise. They dragged Theo and Mitch out to the lawn and pinned them there while another cop sat me and our friend on the steps after a search, like we were sacks they'd check for holes. Neighbors popped out with phones. I stared at a dead ant on the concrete and argued with myself about whether it had been crushed by us or by time. Trauma makes you dumb. I asked the cop a question. I don't remember which. and he told me to shut my mouth. I shut it. Minutes stretched. Hours? I couldn't tell. Sirens faded. Radios crackled. They loaded Theo and Mitch into different cars and left the rest of us in the wreckage of our own day. The air tasted like metal. I went home and lay on my bed and watched the ceiling try to stay still. A couple days later, the story leaked in piece after rotten piece, small town style. The night before, Theo and Mitch and Rich and Tommy went out searching for unlocked cars and found one with a glove box full of loaded luck. They took the gun like they'd won a prize. Then they hit a local restaurant bar after hours, slipped in through the back, and stacked bottles like pirates. Then they crashed at Tommy's and poured it down like they didn't have throats that could close. The gun sat on the table like a dare. Tommy stroked it and called it his toy because he loved shrinking consequences into cute words. Later, how late? Who knows? They hauled a swaying Theo home. Tommy wouldn't leave the gun. He said it followed him. He liked how it made rooms bend toward him. They got Theo to his door. He waved him off and missed the knob twice, and they laughed and left, and somewhere on that quiet block, Tommy and Rich started sniping at each other. Maybe it was about the gun. Maybe it was about the stupid pecking order they built out of nothing. It escalated like lightning. Tommy lifted the gun like he was scratching an itch. He fired. No speech, no warning, no movie beat. He shot Rich in the street. Mitch stood right there, so close he tasted cordite and iron. The gray hoodie explained itself in a single violent second. They ran. Of course they ran. 2 houses on that street had cameras. The videos caught everything: the argument, the flash, the way Mitch froze, then bolted. A neighbor leaving for work found Rich face down near the curb at sunrise and called it in, voice shaking. And our safe town finally coughed up the truth it kept pretending didn't apply here. The cops pulled the threads quick. Theo's name dragged behind the others like seaweed. His mom called him because she thought she still stood between him and the world. And by the time I watched officers point rifles at our faces, all the dominoes had already fallen. I saw Theo once in the hallway after that. He looked like a burned-out building, standing but hollow. He avoided my eyes. I wanted to scream and to hold him, both at once, and I did neither. Mitch stopped wearing red at all, like color had turned on him. He kept his arms tucked tight, like he could make his body a smaller target. People stared. People whispered. Adults said tragedy and senseless and community into microphones. I watched the city crew hose pink water down a gutter and understood bleach only hides things from people who want to be fooled. I stored new habits, counting exits, mapping lines of sight, flinching at door slams. I built a private weather report. Pressure rising, storm incoming. The cops never pointed those guns at me again, but I kept feeling the weight anyway. Nights blurred. I replayed his mom's scream until my chest echoed it. I kept thinking about the forked path you don't notice until your shoe sinks into the wrong mud. I used to think intention saved you. Turns out proximity does the opposite. You stand close enough and the blast pattern doesn't care how clean your hands look. Court came and did what court does. Lawyers carved the night into neat pieces. Everyone told a version that kept their own lungs intact. Tommy took the hit, the charge that stuck, the time that sounded big until you looked at a calendar. The rest walked. People said justice. People said not enough. I said nothing. I was 15, and I had already laid face down on a carpet with my hands tied behind me, because boys I ate lunch with like to call a loaded object a toy. Sometimes I picture the neighbor at dawn, coffee in a travel mug, keys in his hand, stepping into a new life he never asked for. Mine changed too, just from a few feet farther back. Smells linger. Smoke clings. You don't get to choose which part of a night you carry forever. In the end, everyone walked free besides Tommy, who only got 4 years for everything, and I witnessed firsthand something most people never will at just 15 years old.